Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blackhawks Banter, presented by the Hockey Writers. If you're new here, welcome. We join together weekly to talk about all things Blackhawks, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook so you never miss an episode. Our team here at the Blackhawks team at thehockeywriters.com is with me today, as they are every week. So I'm joined by Gail Kauchuk, Greg Boysen, and Shaun Filippelli. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Oh, and I'm your host, Brooke LoFurno, by the way. Forgot to mention myself. But hey, guys. I hope you guys all enjoyed the holiday weekend, and we actually have a lot to discuss. It was a pretty busy week, but I want to take a moment really quick before we start to talk about the news that came out today. 24-year-old goaltender Matiss Kivlenieks of the Columbus Blue Jackets passed away on the 4th of July. And some things, are just bigger than hockey. And I wasn't personally familiar with him, but from all the tributes that we saw, he seemed like an amazing teammate and player, and he will be beyond missed. So our thoughts are with his family, his teammates, and the Columbus Blue Jackets organization. And like I said, it's just devastating news. You never want to hear it. But moving on to Blackhawks news, we actually got some good news this past week about Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews, and this was really welcoming news since everything's kind of been dreary in Blackhawks land. But he released a video to his Twitter account to say that he is feeling better from the illness that has kept him out of the game for the past year. That's called chronic illness response syndrome. And he's back skating in Chicago, and he's planning on being in the lineup for the season opener. So I figured we could play hypotheticals here. So let's say if Tayze were in the lineup for opening night, who would you put on his line? And Gail, I'm going to start with you.
First off, I would really, really, really like to thank you for asking this question, because while some people might say it's too early to talk about the lines, it's never too early to talk about the lines. And I love talking about the lines. So thank you for asking this question. With that being said, I think that, they're going to really benefit from Tayze's return to the lineup. His two-way play, he's great on the face-off dot. His veteran leadership. It's just, I've said it before, really excited that Tayze is hopefully going to be back and healthy. So remember when I think he should definitely still be top line. I don't think the doc is, it's Tayze's spot to lose, and I think the doc, even though eventually he's going to be the number one center, it's not yet. So I would put Tayze on the top line. And then I would also put Kubalik on the left-hand side, Dominic Kubalik. In 2019-20, Tayze and Kubalik were just a great pair together on that top line. That was when Kubalik had those 30 goals in his rookie season. No reason to believe that they can't, get that chemistry back again. So then it's like, okay, who are you going to put on the right-hand side? I would go with Pius Suter. And the reason I would do that is because he actually is used to top line. He was the top center for most of the season. So he's used to the top line minutes, the top line responsibility. We all were kind of surprised that he actually did play center, and thought, well, maybe he should play wing. If he played wing next to Tayze, then that could take some of the pressure off and give him even more success. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for the top line.
I like it. Shaun?
Yeah, I mean, that obviously makes a lot of sense. Everything Gail said is justifiable. But to me, naturally, it just seemed to put Tayze in as much of a comfortable and familiar position as possible. And in doing so, I'm going to put Sprinkett on his left and Can on his right. Two players he has a few years of experience with, maybe not beside them on every single shift or in every single opportunity, but the point is they're familiar faces. Clearly, we know Tayze can perform no matter who he's lined up with, but to me, I want to set him up for as much success as I possibly can from the moment of that first puck drop. And I think just having that familiarity, having that hockey sense come back to him, and allowing him to get his legs under him with that confidence of knowing that support staff is there, is, I think, going to be crucial to making sure that he can get in and be as impactful as we know he can be right off the bat. So to me, let him be familiar, get to Sprinkett on the left, Can on the right, and go at it.
Love that line, actually. Greg?
First off, Brooke, I don't know how you lucked out so well to get all the Blackhawks news on the week you're hosting. The rest of us have been struggling week to find topics, and
we got news.
You got it all within 24 hours. Everything was coming up, Brooke. So congratulations on that. As far as the Tayze line goes, I also would definitely have Kubalik on his line. He played the best stretch of his NHL career with the captain. So any line with 19 on it starts with Kubalik. As Gail said, his 30-goal rookie season that really clicked when he got on that line with Jonathan Toews. And then maybe if he's with Toews, Jeremy Colleton actually plays him more, which isn't a bad thing. So that's a plus there. As far as the right side, I think it's wide open, and I think you can kind of mix and match through the year. I think it all depends on what you plan on doing down the middle with Toews back and hopefully Doc both there from opening night. All of a sudden, you've definitely got those top 6 centers cemented. So maybe a guy, as Gail mentioned, like Pia Suter if he's not going to play center, maybe you put him on the right side. That would be a nice combination. I'm also thinking about maybe a kid like Lucas Reichel. If he makes his team out of training camp and you're not starting him at center, which is probably the right move, ease him in. If he's a kid that you think is going to be a center long-term, playing him on Jonathan Toews' wing for a half a season or a full season is not a bad place for him to get some on-the-job training and see how, one of the best in franchise history plays the position. So Kubalik, Toews, Reichel, if Reichel makes that open night roster is how I'd line it up.
I like that too a lot, actually. And I agree with all of you guys in the way that I think that right side is wide open. And I think unless there's like a big trade or something where we're going to get like a big forward, then that's honestly up for grabs. But my first thought was Kubalik, which I know is kind of the same sentiment we all just said, but also Vinny Hinostroza came to my mind. That might not be kind of like typical, but Colleton, head coach Jeremy Colleton, seems to like putting the young guys on Tayze's line. He's never been shy about that. He put John Quenneville in there last year. He put John Hayden on the first line a couple of years ago, or maybe that was Quenneville too. But point is, they're not shy about that. So, and Vinny, I think if he gets re-signed, he's a free agent, also provides that familiarity. And him and Kubalik also worked pretty well together too. So maybe that line could be something. You never know. But I also kind of want to address something for the fans that are watching is that it is exciting news, but we're also realistic too, to know that what's going on with him is chronic, which means it's continual. It can change by the snap of your fingers. He could be feeling great one day and like crap the next. So we're not expecting him to come right out of the gate and play. But if he's feeling up to it and feeling good like he can, then that's great. But we're not expecting that. We just hope that he's feeling okay whenever that does happen next year. But either way, we're still excited to hear that he's okay. So moving on, let's talk about the other news that I saw, which actually kind of made my jaw drop, and probably for you guys too, but it's about Nikita Zadorov. So Scott Powers of The Athletic made some announcements about what he's hearing about the offseason so far. And he said that Zadorov's camp is asking for a 5-year, $5.85 million contract extension. And he said that the Blackhawks don't want to pay that, but they said that they're willing to pay closer to $4 million. So how do you guys feel about this number for Zadorov? Yay or nay? I feel like I know what I'm going to hear, but I'm going to let us vent anyways. And Greg, I'm going to start with you because we know you're part of his fan club.
Yes, founding member of his fan club. His agent is doing his job. You always start high and then you work your way from there. But whatever he is smoking, please pass me some if he thinks he is worth that amount of that contract. No, not the term, not the salary, no freaking way ever. No. 4 million is even pushing for me. Maybe if it's only for like 2 years, see where we're at. Okay. Listen, this salary cap is flat and it's going to remain flat. Some have reported maybe even for 5 years. You're talking the duration of this contract. You've got a lot of young talent that you are trying to build your franchise around, who entry-level contracts are going to be expiring within the next 2 to 3 years that you have to give raises to. You can't waste money on a guy that gives you hits. Yes, I know I did his grade and it's not as bad as it seems, but it's not worth $5.85 million. No way.
Yeah, agreed. Gail?
Okay, I'm going to be a bit of the devil's advocate here. Definitely not that 8 or 5 that he was asking, but I don't know that I'm too opposed to this 4 million. And the reason I say that is because I did go back and revisit Greg's article, and he talked about how the analytics show that he's a very good defensive defenseman, one of the best on the team, and he did get better this year. So I think that there's more than just hits and physicality, and there is the hits and the physicality. Defensive defenseman is somebody that the Blackhawks don't have a lot of. Their prospects and their youngsters are a lot more offensive defenseman type people, smaller, not as many hits, this kind of thing, not as physical. So his last contract was $3.2 million. $4 million isn't much more. Although this whole 5-year thing, if they could talk him into a little less, like 2 or 3 year terms, something like that, so that there is a little bit more flexibility once the youngsters get a little bit more up to speed, and then you could let him go after that, and you're not trapped into that $4 million for too long. I don't know if I'd be opposed to it.
Shaun?
Greg kind of took the words out of my mouth. I mean, you don't spend 4, 5, 6, or any amount of millions of dollars on a rebuilding team for hits. And I get that some of the underlying numbers show that he improved throughout the year, and he's a defenseman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I've been on record this whole season just saying that from the eye test alone, he never looked like he fit this rebuild. So I'm certainly not willing to spend millions of dollars to see if he turns out to be someone who ends up fitting the rebuild. It's a big nay from me, simply stated.
Yeah, I am on the nay side too. I definitely see where Gail's going about maybe more short term. I feel like if the Blackhawks do want to re-sign him, that's probably the way to go. And my only issue here, my big issue is I really don't think he's worth that much at this point right now. After 1 year, like Greg said, analytically he was okay, but I don't know if I don't think he's shown enough to be worth that much yet. But I think there's a lot of reasons where it makes sense to let him go, but I don't see the Blackhawks doing that because he was traded for Brandon Saad, and then they'd have to admit they made a mistake. So yeah, I'm honestly very opposed to that. Maybe if it was like 1 or 2 years, again, more of a prove it deal type, maybe $2 million, maybe that's what I would say. But yeah, complete nay on that. Don't like it at all. That to me just sets us way backwards again if we have big contracts that aren't worth it. But
Zadorov, he'll be on this team come October, I think.
Oh yeah.
So we can all discuss it again when we see what he gets signed for.
Exactly. I have no doubt that he will actually be here when the season comes. But speaking of defensemen, it seems like a lot of this news that came out this week for the Blackhawks is surrounding defensemen, which is kind of funny. But so you know how the Blackhawks have been linked to Seth Jones for majority of the offseason so far. And because of the rumors, it's natural to start thinking of trade packages. So the Columbus Blue Jackets writers for The Athletic came out with an article this week that gave a hypothetical trade package that the Hawks could offer. So it was Kurashev, Bodine, Reichel, and a first-round pick in 2022 is what they were proposing. So are you okay with this package? If not, how would you tweak it? Shaun?
No, I'm not okay with this package. And I mean, the reality is I've been pretty transparent this whole time about not wanting a player like Jones and the value, his supposed value, coming anywhere near Chicago at this point in their rebuild. I know Jones is a quality defenseman, but the reality is he's being overvalued and overrated at this time. Again, that doesn't mean he's not good, but his market value is ballooning well beyond anything the Blackhawks could even consider wanting to get any part of at this point, again, in a rebuild. So no, I'm not okay with a package that includes that many of their assets, that many of their prospects, let alone picks. To me, you're going to use Bodine to possibly upgrade, fine. You want to look at future picks, fine. But we haven't seen the best of Kurashev, haven't even seen Reichel. I am not willing to let those guys go at this point. I get it. Most people might look and say, why wouldn't you want to trade those players for a proven defenseman like Jones? But again, I'm going to reiterate my stance. Now's not the time to get a player like Jones, so I'm not willing to spend to get him.
Greg?
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of that package at all. And I think we need to point out, it was Aaron Portzline who did that article, and he did it for a couple of different teams, but his baseline was the package that the Ottawa Senators got for Erik Karlsson a couple of years ago when they traded him. So he's kind of comparing that, which I don't think is the right way to start any kind of trade pack, because while Seth Jones is probably a better defenseman than Erik Karlsson is now, at the time, Karlsson was traded, he was an elite defenseman. He had won 2 Norris trophies. He had been a multiple-time All-Star. He had 5 or 6 seasons of over 60 points. Seth Jones has never even come close to accomplishing anything Erik Karlsson did when he got traded. So I don't even think you can say, well, we can get the same thing Ottawa got for Karlsson, because you can't. I don't know what planet you're on. Everybody knows the Blue Jackets have to trade him or he's going to leave for nothing. So that's going to drive down the asking price. But I'm not a fan of this price. As Shaun said, this sends mixed messages. Are you a rebuilding team or not? Because if you're going to trade 4 pieces of your future for one guy, that's not a rebuilding team. Kurashev, I like him. He's a nice player, but he's expendable in my eyes in the right deal. I'm a big fan of Bodine. I think he's going to be, when this is all said and done, I think he's going to be the best all-around defenseman of this current young crop. I think he's only scratched the surface of his potential and how good he can be. So I'm not willing to give him up at this point. Reichel, I can't see the Blackhawks giving up him before he's even played a game in the NHL. So, at this point, if that's what their Columbus is calling you up saying this is what's going to take to get Seth Jones, just hang up the phone and move on.
Gail?
I don't have a whole lot to add. No. Maybe one of those guys is expendable. I don't. Why would you want to give up Lucas Reichel before he's even played a game in Chicago? I don't like that at all. It's just like Greg said, it's too much to give up for just one player, especially, Jones. Is he willing to extend his to sign an extension? If you're just doing this for him to have him for 1 year, absolutely not. And that's the other thing. Is he willing to sign for 2, 3, 4 years? That would really be the only way that the Blackhawks, I think, could potentially get him in the fold. So no, don't like this.
Yeah. It seems like my question was, how would you tweak it? And it seems like our answers are just throw it away. Don't tweak it. Just throw it away. But there's some things in the trade package to me that makes sense, actually. And one was the first round pick, because honestly, that seems like a given, right? It seems like if we're going to trade for someone, that's what you're going to give up. That one seemed like a given. And then also Bodine was someone that kind of intrigued me, only because right now we have so many prospect defensemen, and it seems like he might be the one of that group that might be expendable in the team's eyes, because I don't see them giving up on Wyatt Kalynuk, Adam Boqvist, Ian Mitchell, any of those players. So he seems like he might be one that might be kind of the odd man out. And yeah, Reichel, I'm not okay with either. And Kurashev, I'm not okay with them at the same exact time, giving up on him at the same time. I don't think it's the right time to talk about that either. I think maybe, like you said, Kurashev maybe could be expendable at some point. But yeah, I'm not comfortable with doing all of that all in one. So yeah, unless they talk about different prospects, maybe that they could substitute, I'm not really okay with this either. But I see where they're going with it. But yeah, don't like it that much. Yeah, don't like it either. Just throw it away. Don't like it. So I have to give our mid-show reminders. Welcome everyone to Blackhawks Banter, presented by the Hockey Writers. I'm Brooke LoFurno, your host for tonight, joined by Gail Kauchuk, Greg Boysen, and Shaun Filippelli. Please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our Facebook page and YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. You could also find our show on your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to follow all of us on Twitter too. Our usernames are right here on the Zoom screen, so tweet us, say hey, what's up. We'll say hi back, I promise. So now moving on, we have to talk about the other bombshell that came out, and that's about Duncan Keith. So Elliot Friedman dropped a bomb after Tayze dropped his video that the Hawks were working on a potential Duncan Keith trade to move him to the Pacific Northwest or Western Canada. According to the reports, the team was not planning on moving him, but it was at Keith's discretion because he would like to be closer to his son. Totally understandable. So give me your thoughts on how moving him will impact the team's future. Gail?
All right. Well, I understand that he wants to leave and be closer to his son. And I think that, he probably doesn't really fit in with this rebuilding team anymore. He's a bit disgruntled probably with the rebuilding and having to babysit everybody all the time. I think he maybe kind of like that mentor role, but I'm sure it takes its toll on you after a while. So he just is probably looking for a new start. So the impact that I think that it would have is, well, first off, he signed for $5.5 million for the next 2 years. So if they are able to trade that entire cap hit, that's great. It takes a lot of money off the books. And that would give them more money to potentially invest in a number one defenseman, number one defenseman in Dougie Hamilton or Seth Jones. Another thing that it could potentially do is you won't have to protect Duncan Keith in the expansion draft anymore. So you'll be able to have one more defenseman that you can protect. They were talking about Connor Murphy, and then maybe Nikita Zadorov or Riley Stillman, one of those guys, or even maybe Calvin DeHaan. Who knows what they're thinking or where they're going. But one of those guys now will be able to be protected if Keith doesn't have to be.
Yeah, Shaun.
Yeah, I mean, we're all obviously fans of Keith, so I think that goes without saying. So, regardless of his regression throughout his career in his later years, he's still a steady presence. He's going to be great on whatever lineup. He's going to do whatever is asked of him. At this point in his tenure, whatever he asks for, he should get. I mean, he's earned that right. And if he wants to move on and play somewhere closer to family, then the Hawks should let him. And the added bonus there is not only will it look good on the franchise, but it's going to be better for them and their future, as Gail outlined. The only difference I'll make in terms of the rationale in comparison to Gale's is instead of it freeing up cap space to get a big name guy, like I've said, I don't want that to happen now. What it does is it frees up cap space to sign some of those prospects that are going to be due for a raise in the coming years, like Greg alluded to in a previous question. So it makes sense. Give Keith what he wants. Let him be happy. Let him play where he wants to play the rest of his career. Frees up space for the Hawks. And on top of it all, it forces the Hawks to get players into those minutes, those heavy minutes that Keith would be in every single night. Now it's going to force them to let their youth finally develop the way they should.
Greg?
Yeah, I think it's going to be mutually beneficial for all parties. I don't think Keith has been happy here for a little while. I just, for whatever reason, it just doesn't see. I don't think him and Colleton have ever jived well together. He doesn't fit well in his system. It's got to be kind of tough for a guy that's won 3 Stanley Cups and 2 Norris trophies and all the accolades, and then your coach that you went to war with is gone, and here comes this guy younger than you or about the same age who never had that height success telling you what to do. I can see how that can kind of rub you the wrong way. And he's looked frustrated at times. And listen, his number 2 is going to be hanging in the United Center banner, regardless of who he plays these final 2 years with. So it's beneficial for him. Give him a chance to be closer to home, closer to family, maybe another chance at a long playoff run. He's earned that. If that's what he wants, do your best to make it happen. And then as both Gail and Shaun have said, it's going to help out the Blackhawks. I don't think they're going to get the huge cap hit that everybody relief that everybody thinks that we're going to get. We'll get into that in a second. But again, as far as the nightly thing, it gives you a chance to make, an Adam Boquist play bigger minutes in bigger situations, or Bodine, or any of these young guys. You can start taking those important shifts and minutes that Duncan Keith have, start divvying up with those young players. And then we can finally see those guys take that next progression and hopefully become, the impactful players they were drafted to be.
Yes, I agree with everything you guys are saying. And in my mind, the thought of moving on from Keith, I think, will have more of a mental effect on the team more than anything at this point in time. It's not just hard for the team, but it's hard for the fans too. I mean, he's been the backbone of this team for the past decade, and he's beloved not only by fans, but also by the locker room. He was like Brent Seabrook in the way where the teammates really love and look up to him. So sentimentally, I think it's going to be really hard to lose him. But the thing that makes me kind of feel better is I feel like even if he does get traded, I still think that he will retire a Blackhawk. Like, they'll probably have the one more shift for him and stuff. So like I said, he'll always be a Blackhawk in that sense. But on the business side, it does make sense. I know we've talked about this before on our previous shows, because obviously if you're focusing on a rebuild, then you have to focus on the prospects that you have. So it does make sense, but it is kind of tough to hear. And it's actually kind of tougher to hear now that we've kind of talked about speculation, but now seems like there's actual movement to it. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of comes about this. But yes, he has more than earned it. He's been a workhorse forever, and yeah, he deserves everything he's gonna get. So it's hard, but we'll always be big fans of him no matter where he ends up, right?
Sure. And I think he's definitely the type of guy that, however his career ends, he'll be back in the Blackhawks organization at some point in some role. You know, he was part of a very special group, so I think there's always going to be a job in Chicago for him if he wants it.
Yes.
Well, who knows? You know, you guys, this might not happen. They might not be able to make it work, even if he's requested it. It might not happen.
Yeah, that'd be very awkward. You request a trade, and, sorry, we couldn't do it. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. You know, anything can happen, as we know.
Yeah. Watch, we'll look back on this and be like, okay, actually, everyone, don't look at this episode because we basically just said bye to him, but he's staying. Don't worry about it. Oh, gosh. But you guys know how much I love tying in conversations everywhere. So as part of the Keith trade rumors, I know that we keep talking about the team's length, and it's probably going to be somewhere in Canada, we think. But one of them I've heard is the Edmonton Oilers, and apparently there's been mutual interest on both sides for a bit now. But what the Blackhawks could be targeting is Caleb Jones, who is Seth Jones's brother. Guys, I feel like Seth Jones is going to file a restraining order against us because we keep bringing him up literally on every show, and so I feel really weird. I'm sorry about that, but so yeah, they could be targeting his brother. He's a 24-year-old defenseman, plays kind of similar to him, and obviously, if we do get him, or if the Blackhawks do get him, he could be used as bait to get Seth Jones to come here, which I don't know if that's really substantial, but so I guess I'm opening the floor up to you guys. If there's a trade package to be made with the Edmonton Oilers for Duncan Keith, do you want Caleb Jones to be a focal point in that package, or is there another player or prospect that you would like in the deal? Greg?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know a ton about Caleb Jones. I mean, watching Edmonton Oiler hockey has not been appointment television for me, especially this past season since the Hawks didn't play him. You know, he's a bigger guy. He's a lot like his brother, bigger guy, you know, two-way defender, is physical. He was a big assist guy in his junior career, but that's never really translated to the pros. He spent a lot more time in the AHL, the NHL. I don't know. He's a guy, you know. If you're going to hang your hat on building a championship team on the Jones brothers playing defense for you, then I think you need to find a different plan here. I don't expect much. I'm going to say this to everybody watching: temper your expectations on what we're going to get for Duncan Keith. We're not trading 2012 Duncan Keith here. If we get anything back except cap relief, I don't even think we're going to get much of that. We're probably going to have to take a bad contract back. So maybe, you know, and the name that keeps popping up is James Neal, who actually has a higher cap hit for the next 2 seasons, and he's terrible. I mean, he's not terrible, but keep him away from this team. He's not what we need. So let's not just think, oh, we're going to get we can get whatever prospect we want. No, that's not going to be the case. You know, we may get a better prospect if we agree to take a bad contract back. But I think when it's all said and done, I think the cap relief, if this trade happens, will be minimal. I don't see any scenario where anybody's going to take on his full contract for 2 years and we get, you know, a couple of picks and nothing else. So we'll see. I'm not going to have high expectations on what we're going to get for him. I think this is a move basically to benefit the player, not so much the team.
Okay. Yeah. Gail?
Okay, so the question here was talking about is it Caleb Jones, and you had said that you weren't real familiar with him. I didn't even know that Seth Jones had a young that played for the NHL. So yeah, but I have actually heard that the Jones family, that they're a really good family, and so you would think that we should be excited about, you know, these two kids coming and potentially. They're going to be a great pairing together, and they're going to have this great chemistry, just like the Sedin brothers on with the forward lines in Vancouver. But it just seems a little bit too much like fairy tale for that really to be reality. So yeah, I'm not too excited about that.
Yeah, Shaun.
Well, if bringing in Caleb means that Seth is on his way, then keep Caleb away because I don't want any part of either of those guys on this team. I really have nothing against Caleb, but as you know, I want nothing to do with Seth. So I'm going to just echo what Greg said. I mean, there's value in that cap space. So however much of it they can free up in whatever way the Blackhawks can do so is really where the value comes into play in terms of what they should expect of this trade, in terms of it being a good return for them. So I'm not sure there's really any prospects the Oilers are willing to give up on at this point in terms of that kind of 1-for-1 or where it would make sense for what they're trying to do. Just getting rid of Keith's cap hit is going to be a win enough. So if they can manage that and actually free up space instead of taking on a gross contract like Neal's, then that's a win.
Yeah. When I kind of thought about this, I'm like, of course, there's a couple players I would ask about, but realistically, that's not going to happen. Probably, I don't see the team getting someone really prominent. And I did hear James Neal, and that actually sounds like a deal that the Blackhawks would make. But my first thought when I heard this was this, I'm a White Sox fan. I know I've said this before, and the White Sox have done so many trades over the years about getting everyone's family members trying to get players to sign here, and it never works out. So if the Blackhawks are trying to target him to get Seth, then that to me is just that's not worth it at all. Unless you're like positive, unless Seth Jones said, I will come here if you get my brother, then that's a different story. But I don't think that's what happened, but I'm not really about that either. I don't know much about him, but according to some of the Oilers things I've seen, I've heard he's kind of struggled a bit. So, and that might not be him, that might be the system, but yeah, I'm not really expecting much either, and I'm not a fan of it if it's just like a backwards way of kind of going around it. That actually almost sounds insulting. Like, here, we'll trade for you, so because we really want your brother, not really you, we want your brother. But yeah, not really a fan of it either way. It's just kind of sounds murky.
One last comment on this. One thing we have to remember with all this Keith trade talk, the Blackhawks are not negotiating from a position of power here.
Yeah.
They are desperate to get rid of the cap hit, and they have a player that wants out. They don't have any leverage in any of these trades. So it's going to be kind of a lot of take it or leave it type of things. You don't want it, we're out of here. So temper those expectations on what's coming back. That's my only advice.
Yeah, I could see it being like a Milan, or what's his name, Lucic and Neal kind of trade, something like that maybe. But yeah, unfortunately, it just is what it is at this point. But like I said, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see what actually happens. And like we said before, because we said it probably won't happen, but you never know. But finally, let's have some fun to wrap up the show. So it was a holiday weekend. So it's 4th of July and Canada Day. Happy Canada Day to you, Shaun. Shaun's our Canadian friend, and all of us are American. Woohoo! So happy holidays, everyone. But so I kind of wanted to have some fun with this because obviously there's a ton of wonderful Canadian and American players in the NHL right now. So I want to ask you guys, give me your current favorite Canadian NHL player and your favorite American NHL player. It can be from any team, not just the Blackhawks. Shaun, I'm going to go with you, Mr. Canada.
Shockingly, neither are going to be a goalie, but they might not be too far-fetched. My Canadian is Mitch Marner for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and my American is Patrick Kane for the Chicago Blackhawks.
Love it. Greg?
I'm a big fan of young, exciting defensemen. So right now, I used favorite kind of loosely. These are the two players that make me want to watch a game that doesn't involve the Blackhawks, and that's Cale Makar from the Avalanche. He's my Canadian player. He's so exciting to watch, and cut from the same cloth, but from the American side of the border, Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks. I love watching those two kids play. They're very exciting.
Ooh, very good choice. Gail?
Okay, so my favorite Canadian player is Brad Marchand. Just kidding.
I almost bought that.
Wow.
Yeah, I did too, actually.
I was trying really hard to like keep a straight face for as long as I could.
I mean, I could see where if you were being, I could see where you would like him maybe because he is a good goal scorer.
Yeah, Brad Marchand. I'm gonna go all Blackhawks here. Just excited that Jonathan Tayze is coming back. Jonathan Tayze is just a stalwart person and hockey player, and so he would be my pick for Canada. And then for Americans, it's really kind of a toss up to me between Alex Sprinkett and Connor Murphy on the Blackhawks. But if you force my hand, I would probably go with Murphy because he's a much better interview than Sprinkett, and you can't go wrong with those big ears.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see where you're going with that, but
The goofy look with Murphy.
Yeah. I actually had an easy time with the Canadian and had a harder time for the American one. But I would say for my Canadian player, and it's actually currently going on right now, is actually Braden Point on the Tampa Bay Lightning. I love watching that guy play. Oh gosh, I would love if he was on the Blackhawks. Oh gosh, I just love watching him play. I think he's awesome. And for American, I obviously think Patrick Kane. Obviously, but do you know what player I actually really like is Zach Werenski on the Columbus Blue Jays.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of thought he was really good too, and I like watching him play. So I guess those are two that I would say for right now. But obviously, like I said, we could talk about this for days. There's so many of them, but really good choices, everyone. I like what you guys came up with. I
Quite a
honestly
lineup.
thought we'd all say the same thing. So
Yeah.
Good question.
yeah, I like it. So let us know in the comments to the people watching. Let us know who your favorite Canadian and American NHL players are. We want to know. So that will wrap it up for this episode of Blackhawks Banter. Thank you, Greg, Shaun, and Gail for joining me tonight to talk all exciting things that are going on. And be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook. And you could also find our show on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter. Our usernames are here on the screen. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, and have a great week. Enjoy the Stanley Cup final game tonight. Goodbye, guys.
Bye-bye.